Hi everyone, this is Ellen from Astrology Journal. I want to talk about Saturn's ingress into Aries. That's happening today, May 24th at 11:37 Eastern Daylight Time. That'll be a little after midnight European time. So Saturn entering Aries, it's starting at the very beginning of the zodiac, beginning a new cycle around the tropical zodiac. The theme that I see a kind of a two-level theme. First, who are we versus who are we expected to be? And then, what is the path we as a collective humanity want to take? What do we want to be as a humanity, as a collective, as a human species? Those are the two basic themes that I see. So let's talk about the first one first. So Saturn is in Aries. Aries is the idea of I am. It's our life force. You think about the seed under the ground sprouting. It just automatically knows to move, to sprout up and reach up for the surface, and eventually it breaks through the surface. So it is just this life force that knows what to do. I would say it's maybe pre-conscious or something like that. It's sort of not conscious in the way we typically think about it. It's more instinctual. It just knows what it needs to do. The question is, so Saturn is this idea of structures and work and support. Now, it's support in the sense of the structures that we lay down to travel on, you could say. We do that individually and collectively. And the question is, are those structures that we've laid down for ourselves, are they actually in support of our life force? Are they actually helping our life force to become its fullest expression of itself? Or are they hindering that? And to some extent, the structures that we lay down for ourselves are those we've inherited or those we've been conditioned to feel are best for us. Now, conditioning, I would not say that conditioning is bad in and of itself. Saturn has to do with this idea of conditioning. But to the extent that the conditioning is out of alignment with what supports life, and then to the extent that we've laid down those those structures that are out of alignment with life because we've inherited them, because that's what we were taught to groove when we were young, then we perhaps are out of alignment with our actual life force. And if you think about Aries as energy, it's the energy that allows us to do the work of our lives. When we have structures that train us out of alignment with our life force, well, we have structures that are training us out of alignment with access to that energy. So that's something to think about. I struggle. Energy is my main issue, and that's a lot of my healing process has been trying to figure out who I am and get myself back to who I actually am, as opposed to what I tried to be to meet everybody else's expectations. So that's something worth thinking about. So again, structures are not in and of themselves a negative. The question is, are they in alignment with what supports us, or are they not in alignment with what supports us? And to the extent that they aren't in alignment with what supports us, then the opportunity for us, the continuing opportunity, Saturn has been at the time of this recording, moving through Pisces and gearing up to leave Pisces, which it will do later tonight. It will go back later in a few months, but for a little while it's going to be in Aries. And so in Pisces, it's this idea of letting go of the outdated structures that no longer support us, letting go of the structures that aren't in alignment with Spirit's highest expression, unconditional love, universal love, and letting go of those. And then dreaming in, so we could say that the Saturn in Pisces was about allowing the dream to inform the structures that are created. So the dream happens, and then Saturn's picking up what Saturn knows to do, what its intelligence is this idea of structure. So as it's been picking up on, as it's been shedding what's out of alignment, the old structures, then it's picking up on this dream, and it's kind of gearing up for, okay, what are the structures we need to lay down for life to grow for life to manifest as this new dream that is in alignment with highest spirit, if that makes sense. So now Saturn in Aries, it's the idea of now that dream has been imbued into a seed, and the seed is the first structure, you could say. And so it's really about laying down those initial structures, which are allowing the life force to do what it naturally does. So we don't want to be hindering the life force, but we do want to be providing structure to give it, I guess you could say, to help it with in terms of coherence and not getting all over the place, like to provide a structure that allows it to grow to its fullest potential as opposed to all over the place. I'm not saying that very well at all, but hopefully you get the idea. Saturn, so it's been going through Pisces, this idea of letting go, and then as it enters Aries, it is in a conjunction with Neptune, the ruler of Pisces in modern astrology. And Neptune also has to do with this idea of the dream. And so again, but the interesting thing about Neptune, so the way that I'm starting to think about astrology, just to give context, in evolutionary astrology, which I studied for a little while, they talk about Pluto sort of being the foundation of the chart. In order to understand the chart, you have to understand Pluto. But my thinking is, so Pluto represents the soul. And my thinking is if the soul is kind of comes forth from spirit, then we need to understand spirit first, perhaps. And Neptune represents spirit. So the interesting thing, so we have Saturn, reality, conjuncting Neptune, spirit or dream. And the Sabian symbol for where Neptune is right now is a comedian entertaining a group. So that's really interesting. If we think about Aries as the beginning of the trek around the zodiac, then we have this idea of perhaps picking up tools that will be helpful for us along the way. And comedy is a great way to create the community and to keep us lighthearted. But the thing is about comedy, to me it's a double-edged sword, and that fits with this idea of Aries, in that if our humor is cynical, Saturn, this idea of cynicism can come into play, then then I would say it's out of alignment with what supports life. You know, it's an expression of the wound as opposed to an expression of the just sort of bubbling spirit that is part of who we are. So the fact that Neptune is there is really interesting. So Neptune can be the highest expression of spirit, or it can be the lowest expression of humanity, you could say. It can be exploitation. It can be a kind of debauchery almost, especially together with Saturn perhaps. It can be delusion. It can be, fool's gold, all that kind of stuff. And so comedy in this sort of dark way can be a way to deceive, and can be a way to pull the wool over one's eyes. And it can just be a simple basic expression of our a poverty of spirit. You could say Neptune represents poverty, a poverty of spirit, which would be expressed as a kind of a cynicism. So the question, so the balsamic energy, Saturn and Neptune are in a balsamic conjunction. That balsamic energy is about letting go and releasing and becoming more aware. Neptune is awareness. The balsamic energy is Piscean in nature. Neptune rules Pisces, this idea of awareness. It's about becoming aware of what's been hindering us, Saturn, what's been hindering our life force from really, truly being able to really just express itself fully to, I'm not saying the right words, but anyway, hopefully it comes through. So So this balsamic energy, I believe, is going to help us to see Saturn's moving into Aries just for a couple of months. It's going to go back into Pisces. So in this couple of months, we may be seeing kind of writ large what's out of alignment with our life. And then on the collective level, what's out of alignment with humanity. Of course, we've been seeing that in terms of humanity. But we may be getting clarity about how we have been out of alignment with our life force in ways that will help us to restore our alignment with our life force. I think that might be something that comes through with Saturn moving through Aries for these couple of months. And then it'll go back and refresh itself in Pisces and sort of reconnect with the dream and get greater clarity about, fine-tuning that dream. What is that dream that this life force is going to be like the soil for this seed and this roots that kind of sprout from that seed to take hold in? It's really the dream that the life force takes hold in. So that's a process that may be something we experience over the next few months. There's the other interesting thing about Neptune, looking at Neptune. It is in the first decan of Aries. So the first decan is 0 degrees of Aries to 9 degrees, 59 minutes and 59 seconds. And Saturn is also there. And the tarot card that's associated with the first decan of Aries is Two of Wands. And Two of Wands, the image of the Two of Wands is a man at the edge of his castle, like at the castle walls, looking out at the sea. He's got a wand in one hand and a globe in the other. And so it's this idea of envisioning the future, and envisioning a future that's in alignment with spirit. He's at the edge of that. He's sort of at the wall of his castle, and it's sort of a contrast with the ocean, which is the all that is. So it's really about this idea of dreaming the dream of our future. That's the way I would think about it. Biddy Tarot says future planning, progress, decisions, discovery. I am not an expert in Tarot. I'm just starting to work with it from an astrological perspective. So those of you who know Tarot, you can certainly kind of go deeper in terms of the interpretation of what this means. But to me, it seems like the wand represents sort of waving a wand. It represents, creating the reality we want. That's the way I would think of it. And the globe is our personal world, but also the larger world. So the Pluto, which then after Neptune, we would look at, I'm thinking we would look at Pluto. And so the Sabian symbol for Pluto is a Hindu healer. And so the idea is that this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, Saturn entering Aries in this balsamic conjunction with Neptune, there's an opportunity to heal layers that perhaps are in need of healing, and the time is now for these particular layers to be healing over the next few months, that we may experience something like that. Interestingly, Pluto, the decan, so Pluto is in the first decan of Aquarius, and that equates with the 5 of Swords. And Biddy Tarot says conflicts, disagreements, competition, defeat, winning at all costs. So I'm stepping in after I recorded, because in the original recording I was talking about the 5 of Wands instead of the 5 of Swords. I was mixing the cards up. So I want to talk about the 5 of Swords because that is the card, the tarot card, that's associated with the first decan of Aquarius where Pluto is. So the 5 of Swords, it's the images of a person in the foreground, and there's been a battle that's been fought, and the person in the foreground has 2 swords in one hand and another sword in another. He's clearly the victor. He's looking back at, the losers, you could say. The people in the background clearly have the posture of having lost something. And for me, what comes through with that imagery is this really what we want? Did the victor really win anything, first of all? And obviously we know the losers didn't. It wasn't a good experience for them. It wasn't a good outcome for them. The question is, was it actually a good outcome for the victor? I would say no. And the Hindu healer, so Pluto at 3 degrees, this Hindu healer, there's an opportunity to heal this ceaseless conflict that's been fueling. So conflict, Aries, energy, fueling, and Pluto, oil, fueling our human species, or maybe we could say our human societies for millennia now. And is that really what we want? Is that really in the best interests of humanity, of Earth, of all the different beings and creatures that live on this Earth? Is that really what's in the best interest for us? And so it strikes me that becomes the fuel, that ceaseless conflict becomes the fuel when we are out of alignment with our life force, it becomes a compensation that we rely on to keep us going. So this idea of compensation is Jupiter, and there's a Saturn-Jupiter square. So the structure of conflict has been keeping us going, but is that really what we want? Is that really in the best interest of each of us individually, of all of us collectively, of our well-being? Venus is in Aries. The idea of our well-being is that way of gaining wealth, Venus wealth, is that way of gaining wealth really in alignment with life? And might we be able to do even more than we could possibly imagine if we would just get our life forces back into alignment with the life force, each of us collectively and all of us individually? So I'm going to let it go back to the original video. I'll try to edit so it makes sense, but it may feel a little disjointed. And so then we have the Hindu healer, the actual 3 degrees within the context of that first deck, within the context of 5 of Swords. Well, it's an opportunity to sort of wake up to this dynamic, wake up, Aquarius, wake up to this dynamic and start to heal the layers that are giving rise to it. Do we really need to be in conflict with one another all the time? You know, is that just a pattern, Saturn pattern we've been running because we've been out of alignment with our life force? And that doesn't mean that there aren't, situations that come up that we have to navigate. And it doesn't mean that there aren't moments where it's, we have to make decisions to be, move in a different direction. I'm not denying it. I'm not saying that there isn't reason for conflict sometimes, but to the extent that we're just in the habit of conflict because that's just the habit, because we're out of alignment with our life force, I think we may be getting some clarity on that and perhaps being able to heal different layers around that may help to change that dynamic. I mean, these are all just potentials of things that might come up for us. I didn't actually talk about the Sabian symbol for Saturn. So the Sabian symbol for Saturn is a woman rises out of the water, a seal rises and embraces her. And by the way, all the Sabian symbols that I've been reading are from James Burgess's website, jamesburgess.com. Different people will phrase these Sabian symbols in different ways, but they're all generally the same idea. So there's this idea of the human emerging, the human form emerging from the sea, from the sea of allness, you could say. And I almost think of the seal as like an old skin, and we're shedding that skin, and we're emerging as this new form. We can think of the seal perhaps as the mother of human in a metaphorical way. So there's 2 levels of questions there. Who are we as a human? So we've been given this form. We have the opportunity to explore what that means to be in human form and who we are as that. And then at the collective level, who are we as a humanity? So those are things that make sense to me when I look at this chart, thinking in those ways. In terms of the idea of the collective, it seems to me, I think I'm not saying anything that anybody hasn't already thought, but we're certainly, notwithstanding or not thinking about the actual, physical, horrible wars that are happening in the world right now, really horrendous wars, unconscionable wars that are happening in the world right now, as any war really is, in my view. We are also in an ideological war, a war, about what direction humanity is going to take, what we as humanity are going to be, what are the structures we are going to put in place to support humanity. And the question is, are we going to put structures in place that are going to support humanity as a whole and each individual to help everybody, to support everybody in realizing their fullest life force, the fullest potential of their life force? Or are we going to put structures in place that are only going to support the few at the expense of everybody else? That's really the choice point we're at, Pluto choice. To me, that's a real significant choice point that we're at. Saturn and Jupiter are square in June. They're going to actually perfect that square when Jupiter enters Cancer. And so there's this question. So Saturn and Jupiter are the 20-year societal cycle. Saturn is the governmental structures, or the norms and the rules and that sort of thing, and the obligations of our society. And then Jupiter is the philosophical and legal underpinnings, the beliefs that go into that. If you look on the zodiac, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and then comes Saturn ruling Capricorn. So Sagittarius comes before Capricorn. So to me, that means the philosophies, the beliefs, the knowledge that we have within us, and that we seek, and that we seek out. That all gets sort of incorporated into philosophical structures and systems that create our world. The United States is a perfect example. I mean, the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, those were the ideas, the beliefs, and then the structure kind of formed around that. So what belief, what truth is going to win out? You could say Gemini, duality, Jupiter, truth and lies. What truth is going to win out? Beliefs, what beliefs are going to win out? Philosophies, what philosophies are going to win out? There's a lot going on in the courts right now in the United States with regard to the philosophy, what philosophy of how to interpret the U.S. Constitution, assuming we still have a U.S. Constitution, whatever's going to happen there. What are the philosophies that are going to determine how that is interpreted, for example. So things like that. There's this idea of, and also this idea of lots of information coming at us. And the positive of all this is that we get to be curious about all this. All this information that's coming at us, we get to be curious about this and ask, is this what I believe, or is this not what I believe? Is this what somebody else believes? Is this what somebody has been telling me I should believe? Is this really what I believe? What do I actually believe? What kind of structures would I actually want to see in place? So Jupiter and Gemini, I think, is helping us with that. So despite the overwhelm of all of the information and everything, and all the media coverage and everything that's happening, there's an opportunity there. Jupiter would be opportunity in my view. There's an opportunity. What do I actually really believe? We're having to ask ourselves this question perhaps in a way we haven't before. We've just sort of gone along because it's all worked. And perhaps in some places we've been going along to get along, and now going along to get along perhaps might not be working. But to the extent that we have been just going along, it's like this extended moment, in particular the U.S. history, but I think also in global history, is kind of like, well, what do we actually really want? What do we actually really want? What choices do we really want to make? So that's the positive. It's giving us that kind of information and perspective and experiences to maybe start to more consciously make decisions about this, what we want our humanity to be, and the structures that support us. And interestingly, it's a comedy a comedian entertaining a group. So it's interesting because that takes into account this idea of the individual and the collective. So in some extent, comedians can be nourishing to the collective, right? And can also be helping to bring awareness to the collective. But the question is, what is the kind of comedy? What is the comedy rooted in? Is it rooted in the life force, or is it, a healthy life force, or is it rooted in tired cynicism? That's maybe the question. And then how are we, of course, using comedy? Did I say this at the beginning? I can't remember. But I laughed a lot when I was a kid, but my personal humor wasn't particularly elevating. It cut people down. So what kind, was I a positive member of that community? I would say no. I participated in making sure that people stayed down instead of helping them discover who they are and realize their potential. So there's a lot of power in comedy. And if we think about Aries as the first part of the path, and perhaps we're picking up tools and skills along the way as we go through Aries, comedy is a really powerful tool, and it's up to us to use it and wield it in ways that support life, our life and the lives of others. So I think those are probably my thoughts about this. Saturn enters Aries in this particular, it'll enter it again I think at the beginning of next year, but it's at this time that it's entering it. The lunation, the sun and moon are in a balsamic phase. So again, that's the idea of something ending. So even though Saturn is entering Aries, so starting afresh, it's really more this energy of endings. And that's been a lot of what I've seen in charts for quite some time now, that it's really still more about ending, the endings of things. And next year, I think we'll see more of the beginnings of things, the true beginnings of things. So I think what I'll do is I'll end it here. Thank you so much for listening. I hope there was something helpful. Remember, take what works and leave the rest. I have a strong bias in how I read things because of my experience, long experience kind of traveling the healing road, trying to heal myself. So I bring a lot of that perspective to what I read. And I'm also trying, not trying, but more and more I'm bringing a bit more of a developmental perspective. I didn't talk about that explicitly here, but there's kind of oftentimes that kind of undercurrent to what I'm talking about. So those are my biases and my perspectives. If they're helpful for you, wonderful. If not, find the people who are sharing perspectives and insights that are helpful for you. And with that, I will say goodbye. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care. Bye.